Dobro večer, gledate Otvoreno studio, ja sam Borjan Jovanovski, večer во Отвореното студио е во Европскиот парламент во Брисел на само неколку дена пред изборите за Европскиот парламент и точно една недела пред објавувањето на извештајот за напредокот на Македонија и останатите земји од Западниот Балкан. Мои гости вечерва во студиото се Шада Ислам, директор за Европа и геополитика во влијателниот think tank Пријатели на Европа, и Аугустин Павлокај, добро познат на јавноста во регионот, дописник од Брисел, долги години на јутрарни листи Кохадиторе. So welcome to our program. Thank you to both of you to accept my invitation. So, for my first question, having in mind that we have the European elections next days, what are your expectations?
I think it's going to be a make or break elections, very, very important at this time, very crucial, because we have, for the first time, the indication that the far right populists are going to get many, many seats in the European Union. So that consensus that existed between the EPP, so the Conservatives, and the Social Democrats, a kind of a grand bargain that these decide things on their own, that's going to be contested very much by the far-right populists who are going to gain more seats, but also by the Greens and by other smaller parties. So we're going to, and the Brexit Party is joining as well.
When you say many far-rights, what's many?
Well, the predictions, as you know, in these days, you can't really predict. But at the moment, the far right has a very, very small portion of the seats in the European Parliament. But if you look around you, they're very confident and they are quite convinced that they're going to increase their number of seats. Now, I'm not going to talk numbers here because, you know, these days, the predictions you make will go wrong. But all I can say is that they're going to increase their number manyfold. And that's going to be quite a change for this European Parliament.
Augustin, what's your comment? What do you expect?
Well, I agree with Shahta that those are crucial elections, maybe the most important in the history of European Union. But I don't share the concern about the influence of the far right. They will grow in number. They will be more, how to say, aggressive in their rhetoric. But how big their influence will be depends on the traditional party to flirt with them. The problem is not populists and extremists. The problem is the traditional parties who are ready to take their agenda and to work with them. Far right in Austria didn't come to power. They were brought there by Sebastian Kurz. Now, this is a good news for Europe that this government in Austria collapsed, because it's a good example that you cannot tame them by taking them in government and looking to follow their rhetoric.
Do you think that it will reflect the results of the...
It might reflect, and for good,
for the reason. For the extreme right?
Yes,
yeah.
It might
and
reflect.
So
it might reflect, and it will be a warning for traditional party not to go with them. So still, the Greens, Social Democrats, Liberals, and EPP together will have, I guess, around 500 seats in the European Parliament.
And if they... Two-thirds majority.
Yes, if they stick together on key European issues, they will block the influence of far right.
Yeah.
So, but they need to stick together, not to fight each other so much. Of course, they have different ideology, different agenda, but on the key, at least all of those parties, groups that I mentioned, are pro-European. It will be very interesting to see effect of UK participation in those elections, because this is creating so much trouble and they don't even know how to count. So if the Labour votes and seats will be counted in the socialist group, then the difference between EPP and socialists will almost disappear. So, but the results of the elections will be how to say, the beginning of the process where the key decisions for the future of Europe will be taken, from the decision who leads the European Commission Council to the multi-annual financial framework. And based on this, you will see in which direction EU will go in the future.
That's my next question. Who having in mind the results that we expect as an outcome of these elections, who will run the Commission next?
So that's a very, very important question, because as Augustin has said, it's about the leadership also, not just in the Parliament, but also in the European Commission, the Council of Ministers, also the European Central Bank. But I want to make one point. We say that the far right is going to get more seats. It will really depend on voter turnout. Okay, if it's the usual 38%, 40% voters going out to vote for the European elections, then we will see a gain for the far right. But if young people come out and vote, if women come out and vote, and if you have more ethnic minorities, so the non-white Europeans voting, we could see different results, because the far right agenda is anti-woman, anti-minorities, and anti-young.
So we can expect a kind of good surprise.
Yes, if they get.
I also expect a bigger turnout, especially among young people.
I hope so.
Because Brexit was a good example that if you don't vote, somebody else decides for your future. So and the campaign this time have been more,
it was a good lesson.
It was a good lesson. For the European Commission, I think it's going to be quite interesting also whether the system, 5-year-old only, an informal understanding on a Spitzenkandidaten. So the leading party in the European Parliament puts forward, and only they have the right to name the Commission
and the Socialists.
And the Socialists. And so that is going to be something that we will have to discuss. But as you know, Emmanuel Macron, the French president, has said no, he's not interested in the Spitzenkandidaten procedure, and so has Mark Rutte of the Netherlands. So that's going to be a struggle, a very interesting one, within the EU Council of Ministers, within the EU Council. And that's going to be a very important indication of where Europe is headed as well. And finally, Borjan, I see also some commissioners coming from some countries who could be populist. For the moment, we're lucky because the populist wave has come in after Brexit and Trump. So it's quite recent, 2 or 3 years, and the commission was formed 5 years ago. So Federica Mogherini, the High Representative, is not from the current Liga government, if you like. So, but next time around, I mean, these people are going to send their own candidates, right? So what will be the profile of the European Commission?
But I guess that the main position as President of the Commission, President of the European Council, President of the Parliament will be sort of distributed among EPP, Socialist and Liberal.
It will be maybe distributed, and this is good word, because for 2 times we had all 3 belonging to EPP. Even Juncker admitted that this was maybe a mistake. But this time Liberals for sure will not allow that EPP takes everything, or they share with Social Democrats and Liberals don't get anything, because don't forget, I think even they have majority in the Council. So out of the President and Prime Ministers, I think there are 9 heads of states or governments in the Council from Liberals. And there is a decision making, not only in European Parliament. But the problem is that if France and Netherlands stick not to recognize the Spitzenkandidat system this time, and Germany fights back, and if they find a compromise in the Council which is not accepted by Parliament, we might have interinstitutional conflict within EU, and this can happen. So this time I think that it will be more difficult than 5 years ago to elect the President of the European Commission.
What do you think about the rumors that Madame Merkel could replace the Spitzenkandidat now, Mr. Weber, who is the President of the EPP?
That she could back down, you mean?
I mean, to take a position of the President of the Commission.
She denies herself that she's
she
not
denies
interested.
it, but I'll tell you something, Augustin, she denies it, but politicians...
Still, the rumor is still present, yeah.
Politicians always deny. Politicians always deny. And frankly, I see her more in the role of the President of the EU Council, the place of Donald Tusk. I think that's, and I frankly would love it. I would love to have Merkel in charge of the EU Council. She's a competent woman, she's loyal, she's the determined European.
And it would be a strong pro-European message.
And she gets things done.
Yeah.
She gets things done. And she's a woman, and it's time we had a woman as well. And she was born in Eastern Germany, so she ticks many, many boxes. Above all, she's a real stateswoman. And I think it would be great to have her in the role of Donald Tusk. I do not see her myself in the role of the European Commission President, but I could be wrong.
Well, I think she would be excellent President of the Council, but she is a person who different from other politicians. I think what she says she really means, and I don't think that she is interested. The problem will be for the EU that the kind of leaders like Merkel will be missing in the future, because she was among the last leaders ready to take decisions that were not popular among the public opinion if she believed the decision was right. We are going to miss this kind of leaders who are ready to risk and who are ready to sacrifice politically for the principles. And this is not good for the future of Europe, because a young generation of politicians, even in Social Democrat group or in EPP, they are ready to make compromises and to work with the populists and extremists if needed, and to take some part of their agenda.
I'm asking you about the future of the European institutions, having in mind within a context of the process of enlargement and the prospect of for the Western Balkan within a process of European integrations. It's very much important. For example, who will be on the head of the Commission, who will run the DG enlargement also. So what do you think, how the outcome of this election will reflect the process of enlargement?
Frankly, I don't think much will change compared to what we've had so far for 5 years. So Juncker came in saying a moratorium on enlargement for 5 years. He's lived up to that statement, and given Europe's current, if I may use the word, turmoil, and the changes we're seeing, the rise of the far right, but also economic stagnation, the rise of China, Brexit, connecting with the people, there are so many internal challenges which actually I think are good for Europe, because it makes us wake up and stop being so complacent. But we're going to be very busy with that, and I think generally, if I may say so, I know this is quite disappointing for our friends, I don't think there's a public opinion appetite for further enlargement, given all the problems we face at the moment. So I think whoever takes charge, and whatever the profile of the commissioners and the heads, they will not be, let's say, spearheading any new initiative when it comes to the Balkans. I'm pessimistic.
What's your comment? Having in mind, the disappointment already in the countries in the region about all promises from Brussels.
Well, we have to be careful. We have to be careful because the promises were not made in the way that the national leaders in the Balkans presented them. So EU is very careful in language. At least on that they are very good and professional when they write the sentences that can be interpreted different without taking too much of obligations. Yes, Juncker said that during this Monday there will be no enlargement. This was a necessary statement because it was clear that no country will be ready, and anyway, now he is warning that without enlargement we might have a new conflicts in the region. So he's very supportive about enlargement. As a person, he's proved to be a politician who belonged to the generation that unified Europe and was very pro-enlargement. I want to see after those elections how discussion on enlargement goes, because for now there is no discussion. And to quote a diplomat saying that it's better if they don't speak about enlargement, because if they speak negatively about enlargement. In Germany and France, 66% of population is against enlargement, even if the country fulfill the conditions. But many people would say that this is because of the fear of Turkish membership. Turkey is changing, not in the direction of becoming more European, unfortunately. If Weber would become a president of the Commission, his position is that Turkey should not be a candidate, and it should be told that you will never become a member state. And then this might relax the public opinion, which will not fear much the Western Balkan countries. So how to take Turkey out of the process in order to have more support for the Western Balkans. This will be a debate in the future. But when it comes to the concrete results, I expect that after the elections there will be a decision for Macedonia and maybe for Albania to set a date later in this year to open accession negotiations.
If there is no interest for enlargement, if the politicians and the EU institutions follow the public opinion, which is as you said, negative. What are the geopolitical consequences?
Well, the thing is, if you look at the world today, right, Borjan, you already see a shift of power, a shift of influence to the east. Now, I'm not just talking about China, but China is very much part of the paradigm, part of the discussion. Europe across the world, and I'm starting with our neighborhood, I'm starting with the Balkans, is losing credibility, losing relevance and influence to Russia, to China, to Turkey, and that is not something that's new. It's just growing more and more.
Why so?
Well, because there's a space. Well, the Balkans are strategic. They're very important. These are countries that need to grow. These are growing markets. There's a consumer market there. There are young people there, a great youth population. These are important strategic destinations for investors and those looking for growth markets. You know, we in Europe look at the Balkans and all we see, excuse me for saying so, all people see is trouble. You know, the overarching narrative about the Balkans in European public opinion, it's not my opinion, it's the public opinion, is negative. Corruption, reconciliation is not happening, ethnicities that are fighting each other.
As Augustine said,
but
66% against.
Yeah, but that's the overarching narrative that we get in Europe, okay? Europe looks at Africa and also sees only trouble. Other people, the Chinese, the Russians, the Turks, they don't see trouble, they see growth opportunities. So these countries are thinking really long term, and investing in the Balkans is important for the future. They're doing it for themselves, but they're also doing it for strategic reasons. The Balkans are part of 17+1, the Belt and Road Initiative as well. These are initiatives of China, and they're taking part because they need the money and they need the investments.
No, it's clear, but so what's the problem for the political elite in Europe to understand this and act this way?
We don't think very long term.
Problem, yeah.
We have elections all the time.
I think this is the weakest point of European Union, and chronicle problem is that they are ready to pay, they are ready to give money. By far, EU and member states are biggest investors, biggest donors of the money for the Western Balkans, but they are not ready to take decisions. So they will give 1 billion if needed to Kosovo, but they will not decide to liberalize visa. For them, it's more difficult to give a date to start accession negotiations that can last 10 years for Albania than to give donations for big projects. So EU was there, but this is in general EU roles in the world. So the power of EU in financial aid is never followed by political influence because they are not ready to take decisions. And here we come to the idea to change the decision making also on foreign policy and maybe enlargement in the future into the qualified majority, because we saw in Macedonia, I remember when Macedonia had the SAA agreement, Croatian diplomats of that time, including today's Prime Minister Andrej Plenković, were asking Macedonian colleagues for advice. Croatia is member for 7 years and you haven't started yet. So this is just to prove how difficult it is when one country can block entire process.
There was the European Union asked both Macedonia and Albania to make the reform. It was a condition for Macedonia to find a compromise with Greece, which is done with the Prespa agreement. Albania made some efforts to reform the country. And what do you expect now from the progress report, which is going to be published next Wednesday? Do you think that, I mean, Commissioner Hart stated that they will recommend the start of negotiation, and then maybe the first test, how the outcome of this election will reflect the European Council will be the next summit. What do you expect?
So as you're saying, Borjan, I think the Commission will do its job honestly. And suggest, recommend opening negotiations, which I think, as you've said, is absolutely Macedonia's right. It's done all the right things. The Prespa agreement is important, and it has raised hopes that other countries in the region will also have some reconciliation and get rid of some old animosity. So it's really raised the profile of the Balkans, definitely. But we're talking political decisions here, as Augustin has said, and that's going to be the test in the EU Council, where we know that Emmanuel Macron has since last year been saying that he's not ready for further enlargement, and he is clearly going to block any start of negotiations.
What's his problem with the enlargement, having in mind that he announced his mandate as a pro-European and there was many...
Because he thinks that EU is in a mess and it needs to be reformed from inside, and after this it can take more members. But I don't think that he is perfectly informed. We think that if somebody is president of France, he knows everything. I think he is learning, and it's good that Germany is working, because don't forget that Germany is very skeptical about enlargement, but it's not against. They are careful. But if somebody respects the rules, they advance in the process. We are speaking about advancement in the process. So I don't think France will block start of accession talks with Macedonia. There are some attempts to decouple Albania and Macedonia, not because Macedonia is much better, but because the conditions for Macedonia is easy to measure. So you had do this and implement the agreement, and you are in. NATO signed protocol for accession, and now it's up to EU to stick to its promises. I think, of course, that the Commission will recommend start of accession negotiations. Commission has done this in last 10 years every year for Macedonia, but you haven't started. So Macedonia,
because the main reason for the European Council was that because the Greece...
Yes, now
there was a Greek reason. Now we have
this reason disappeared.
Prime Minister Tsipras, who is a sponsor of Macedonia to start the negotiations.
So I think it will be, but I think that they will be more, relaxed after European elections, and they will say, okay, because anyway the formulation to set the date will be that we decide to later in the year to decide to open accession negotiations, provided that the ministers decide. So, it might be that they will not decide end of June because it's too early.
So what's next?
And then in July, because you know that the decision to start the talks have to be made by the European Council. But they can always formulate this in a way that later in the year it is formally approved by the Minister in General Affairs Council. So if not in June, probably in the first General Affairs Council in July, to set a date to start in October, November, December. But I think it should be done this year, and I hope that for Macedonia and probably also for Albania, but Albania is in a little bit different situation.
Shada, what's the alternative if there is no green light for the recommendation of the Commission? What's the alternative?
Well,
what the European Council could do?
Well, I mean, the thing is that they will, as I said initially, Europe is losing its credibility, its relevance, and its influence in the Balkans, and that slippery slope will continue, which is, I think, going to be a real bad thing for the region and for Europe as well. We live in the neighborhood. We keep saying we're one big family, and then you're treating one part of the family as the poor cousins, and you're keeping them deliberately outside your family in a sense. So you're treating them like step family, and I think that's going to create quite a lot of angst within the public opinion.
Think that Mr. Macron is not conscious about the consequences of such ignorance towards region?
I think Augustin is right. They will set a date, and then negotiations will probably start sometime. But it's the enthusiasm, it's the real belief that your countries should be part of the European Union. I don't think that is very structurally within France at the moment. France is looking at Europe. We're talking about Europe reforming in clusters. We're talking about countries working together in some areas and not working together in some areas. Europe is in a state of flux. Europe is reforming, rethinking, revisiting some of its fundamental values as well. And there is concern, I would say in some cases rightly, that in some Western Balkan countries, those values of Europeans, human rights, rule of law, democracy, are not being fully by the governments. I'm not talking about the people. So all of those elements come into the discussion. And then finally, one thing also, Brexit. Okay, so Britain leaving the European Union also leaves a gap in the pro-enlargement member states, if you like. And Brexit will have an impact on how enlargement is done.
Important engine pushing the enlargement process.
But also showing that countries who join in a, excuse me for saying so, in a half-hearted manner, or don't bring the entire public with them, where there's no real public support, or there's really anti-European parties there, populists or others, shouldn't really now, at this stage, be part of the European family. So it's a very mixed picture that we're seeing at the moment.
So it is difficult to expect that we are going to have a commissioner as Verheugen was it in a
Different
in the
times.
90s
At the
when
time,
it was a big bank enlargement.
Yeah, but at the time this was first priority of European Union. Everybody was speaking about unification of Europe. 10, 12 countries in the process of joining. He was vice president of the Commission, so this was the main issue. Now it's not. We are happy to say that it's not on the during the debate. It's not mentioned. It was mentioned in France during the debate. Out of 12 candidates, 11 said no about enlargement. So I agree that sometimes it's better not to mention than to mention, because when they say no, then it's more difficult for them to say yes after. So I think the consequences are already there. We see in Kosovo more Turkish influence. We see in Serbia key influence from Russia and China. We see attempt of Merkel now with Macron to reconcile Serbia and Kosovo. It didn't work first time because Kosovo president said that I am appalled that Americans are not informed, while the Serbian president was saying that without Russia there can be no decision. So EU is losing already influence, and you lose influence by not sticking to the promises. So, and then you have the EU blame the corruption and organized crime, and at the same time they have as a main partner those politicians who are responsible for this situation, because they are aware that for next 10 years they will be not in EU. I saw in case of Croatia, closer the country becomes in the process of joining, then more strict they become towards this country. When they are ready to flirt with the local politicians there, then they know that, okay, during my mandate I don't want trouble. So in a way, Commissioner Johannes Hahn was there to make sure that nothing happens. Whether the role of the next commissioner will be like that or not, it remains to be seen. The idea, last year.
Who will have which country will take the portfolio of the, which is a difficult
I'm
one.
not going there. I'm not going to make that prediction. But what I will say is what I'm hearing more and more in Brussels is a lot of hope on the Croatian presidency of the EU starting in 2020, right? That those 6 months, a country from the region, country that understands the Western Balkans, country that knows all the leaders, knows the opportunities and challenges, that somehow Croatia will perform the miracle and push hard and make sure that people stay on board for enlargement. So it's interesting, isn't it? You'll have a new leadership, but immediately afterwards you will have a country from the region in the EU president's chair. And that, I think, is going to be important. At least there is hope that Croatia will reignite the spark, if you like, for
This is the aim of Croatian Prime Minister, who already said that in May next year there will be a Western Balkan EU summit in Zagreb. 20th anniversary of Zagreb summit, where
where Macedonia, by the way, signed the stabilization and association agreement.
So I agree that Croatia will try, but Croatia as a new member state cannot do a miracle, because most new member states, even the population, is very pro-enlargement. I mean, there is sometimes sentiment in Serbia that Croatia will be against Serbia, but it's not true. The problem is in western part of European Union. Eastern part of European Union plus Sweden, they are pro-enlargement. Italy, Spain, and so on. But Luxembourg, Belgium, Netherlands, Germany, France, they are very much against the population.
Shada, Augustina, thank you very much. It was a pleasure having you in my program. Гледавте Отворено студио, овој пат од Европскиот парламент од Брисел. Ви благодарам за вниманието и останете со НТВ.